When was the last time that you actually looked at your to-do list and genuinely felt on top of it? Not like just for that 5 minutes on a Sunday evening before the week starts and you feel like, okay, I'm ahead of the game, like properly, satisfyingly on top of it. I'm guessing it's been a while because here's what I hear from the peripreneurs that I work with. And honestly, what I used to live myself, that list never gets shorter. It just gets longer every day, no matter how early you start or how late you finish or how many systems that you try, how many productivity apps you download, convincing that this is the one that's going to be the answer. That list just continually grows. And then at some point, you stop seeing it as a tool. You start seeing it as proof that you are behind, proof that you're not good enough, proof that everyone else has figured something out that you haven't. Well, I want to tell you today that none of that is true. And more importantly, I want to show you exactly why your to-do list is doing what it's doing, because it's not random. It's not a character flaw of yours. And it is absolutely fixable. So stay with me. Welcome back to the Simplified CEO podcast. I am Claire Bartlett, business strategist, anti-hustle pioneer, and the person who is going to stop you wasting another evening color coding a list that didn't need to exist in the first place. If you are new here, welcome. This show is for coaches and business owners who are done with the grind and ready to build something that actually works with their life, with their energy, and with their biology. We go deep on the strategy and the structure and the stuff that nobody in the business world really talks about. So today's episode is one that I've wanted to record for quite a long time because the to-do list problem is one of the most universal and most exhausting and most misunderstood problems in small business. And it has 5 very specific causes. Reason 1 is you're confusing activity with progress. Okay, so I want to start here because I think it's the root of almost everything else on this list. Your to-do list isn't getting shorter because most of what's on it isn't actually moving your business forward. And I know, stay with me, but here's what I mean by that. When we feel busy, genuinely actively busy, we feel like we're making progress, right? There's a kind of comfort in it. The checking off, the crossing out, the satisfying sense of motion and that feeling is really addictive, which means that we unconsciously fill our lists with things that create that feeling, whether or not those things are actually the things that matter. I used to, and I've been open about this before, I used to do a task and then write it on my to-do list purely so I could get that dopamine hit of crossing something off. And if you've seen my list before, it's really pretty, loads of different colors. I make it really attractive. So it's something that I want to spend time in. But what I realized was that actually the things that I was putting on the list and that was drawing my attention were not things that actually meant anything to my business. They weren't getting the momentum that I needed to get my business to where I wanted it to be. And it turns out I wasn't alone in that. I worked with a client, let's call her Jess, and she came to me completely burnt out. She was working 6 days a week. Her to-do list was 3 pages long, all handwritten. Some of it honestly had been on there for months. And she didn't understand why her income wasn't growing despite the amount of work and effort she was putting in. So we sat down and we went through every single item on that list. And you know what the percentage of it was genuinely generating revenue? It was about 20%. And the rest was admin that made her feel organized, but wasn't changing anything, or social media that she was feeling obliged to do, but wasn't converting any clients. The research that she'd been doing for like 6 months before acting on, things that she'd carried forward from last month's list because she felt too guilty to just delete them. She was exhausted from doing 80% of her work. And then the 20% that would have actually changed things kept getting pushed to the bottom because the other stuff always felt more urgent. And this is one of the most common patterns that I see, and it has a name. It's called productive procrastination. You stay busy so you don't have to feel guilty about not doing the hard stuff, the visible results stuff, the uncomfortable stuff, the things that feel risky because they actually matter. And here's where I would be doing you a genuine disservice if I didn't mention the perimenopause angle, because this pattern gets significantly amplified during this phase of life. Of course it does. When your brain is operating under hormonal flux, the cognitive load of perimenopause, the brain fog and, the decision fatigue, the way complex tasks suddenly feel like a mountain to climb, it means we naturally gravitate to those smaller, more manageable tasks on the list. And it isn't because we're lazy, it's because our brains are doing their best to protect us from overwhelm. But the problem is those smaller tasks rarely change anything. And so that list never gets shorter because the big things never get done. And the fix for this is simple, but not easy. Before you write a single task on your list for tomorrow, ask yourself, what are the 3 things that would genuinely move the needle this week? Everything else is either scheduled for later or cut entirely. That is your job. Those 3 things. The rest is just noise. Right. Then reason 2. And this one is going to feel uncomfortable because it requires honesty about how the list gets built. Most people add things to their to-do list the moment they think of them. Something pops into your head at 11 p.m. at night and you write it down because you don't want to forget it, right? You see someone else doing something on Instagram and you think, I should be doing that. And it goes on the list. Or your accountant mentions something in passing and you add it, even though you're not even sure what. A podcast you listened to last week had 7 action points and you add all 7. We've all been there, right? And especially with perimenopause, we get really forgetful. So everything goes on the list. But this means that there's enormous accumulation of every idea and every obligation and everything you probably should be doing that's ever crossed your brain. And that list has no filter. And a list with no filter is not a to-do list, it's a brain dump. And here's the thing about brain dumps without the filter. It's actually a very simple question that you need to be asking yourself. And the question is, does this belong in my business right now, in this quarter, at this stage? Not, is it a good idea? Not, could this work eventually? Right now. Because most of what ends up on the average to-do list, it's not now work. It's eventual work. It's when I get around to it work. So it just sits there day after day, making the list feel insurmountable and draining your energy. I talk a lot about the concept of the quarterly strategy inside the Simplified CEO system. The idea that you should be operating your business in 90-day blocks with a very clear set of priorities per block. And when you do that, the filter becomes easier because does it belong in quarter 3, yes or no? If no, it either goes in a future ideas list or somewhere else entirely, or it just gets deleted. Because the truth is, if you haven't done something in the last 3 months and there's no consequences to not doing it in the next 3 months, it probably doesn't need to be on your list at all, right? So we have to ask ourselves, what is really genuinely important to us right now? And I get it because I am a creator. I get so many ideas constantly and I don't want to forget them. And because I'm so forgetful right now, literally walking from one room to the next, I've forgotten what I was going in for. So I do have to write them down, but I don't put them on my to-do list because it isn't an action for today or this week or even this month. It's just somewhere safe. So I know that I've had that idea and I know that I might want to action it at some point in the future. So I don't have a to-do list. I have an ideas list. Everything gets dumped on there. That is my brain dump. My to-do list is purely for the actions that I need to take right now. And I know that that might sound like a radical notion, but your to-do list should be an accurate reflection of your current priorities, not like a graveyard of good intentions from 6 months ago. So the action here is to audit your list, take everything on it and ask, is this current work? If no, you move it off. And if yes, you take action, you leave it on the list. But I promise you, having that declutter will make you feel so much better instantly. Okay. I want to pick up on something that sits underneath reasons 1 and 2, which is the question of time itself. One of the sneakiest reasons your to-do list never gets shorter is that you're not allocating protected time to actually work through it. You're reacting to your day instead of designing it, right? And everything reactive then feels urgent, which means the list never gets touched in a deliberate way. So let me paint you a picture. You sit down on a Monday morning with a clear intention to work on your biggest priority. Let's say it's finishing your new program content. And then someone sends you a message that needs a response. And then an email comes in that feels time sensitive. Then your phone buzzes. Then a client needs something. By the time you've dealt with all of that, it's lunchtime. And somehow you've been incredibly busy all morning, but you haven't done a single thing on your actual list. Sound familiar? We've all been there, right? It's so easy to do. But this is what I call the reactive trap. And it's not a you problem, it's a design problem because your day has not been designed to protect your work. It's been left open, so urgency rushes in and fills that gap. When I overhauled my own working pattern, and this was post perimenopause diagnosis, so my capacity had genuinely changed, I realized that I'd been operating reactively for years and calling it busy. I'd been available to everyone on my own time. My own work was always my last priority. So the shift was what I call protecting my creative hours. Not creative hours in like a woo journaling at sunrise way. I mean the hours in your day where you are simply not available for anything incoming. So no messages, no emails, no checking anything, just doing work. So for me, my brain is often sharpest in the morning. So it was my first 3 hours in the morning. And then perimenopause has only made that more true because by mid afternoon, I need to be doing lighter tasks. And I have a really long lunch break now to help me recharge. So 2 to 3 hours of protected creative time, 5 days a week, is roughly 12 hours of deep work per week. That's more than enough to run a successful coaching business in those hours, if those hours are spent on the right things. The problem isn't that you don't have time, it's that you haven't claimed it and you're not using it effectively. So here is your action for this one. Look at your diary for next week right now, and then find 2 to 3 hours on each working day, ideally, where you will be genuinely unavailable. Then block them out, label them with however you need to, whether it's deep work or strategy, whatever makes sense for you. And then those slots are where you do nothing reactive. You pick one item, the top of your to-do list, and you work on it until it's done. The list gets shorter because you've finally given it somewhere to live in your week. Okay, then we're into section 4. Now, this reason needs a little honesty. This is the one that nobody in the business world really talks about because it requires admitting something that feels counterproductive. A lot of things on your to-do list are probably things that you are not particularly good at or things that you actively dislike. So those things will stay on your list forever because we avoid what we dislike, even when we know we shouldn't. Even when we've been carrying those items forward for 3 months, we will find every other task in the universe to do before we tackle the ones that drain us. And here's where it gets interesting because we're not just avoiding them because they're unpleasant, we're avoiding them because they're slow. When we work on things that don't come naturally, everything takes longer. We make more mistakes, we second guess every step, we redo things 3 times. And so a task that should take an hour takes a day. And that day eats a chunk of your week that could have been spent on something that you're brilliant at and fast at and love. And I want to be very honest here. I spent years doing tasks I had absolutely no business doing myself. Building bits of tech that confused me or writing copy that didn't feel like me. And I told myself that I was saving money. I was being really smart. But what I was actually doing was spending a disproportionate amount of my best hours on things that I was mediocre at best, which meant that I had very little left in the tank for the things that I was excellent at, the things that actually grew the business. So the question you need to ask about every item on your to-do list is this something only I can do? Or is this something that I should be outsourcing or automating or just removing altogether? And not every item will have a clear answer immediately, but even identifying 2 or 3 things that are consistently draining your list without giving you back any real results, and then letting those go can fundamentally change how that list feels to work through. Don't get me wrong, this isn't about spending money that you don't have. It's about being honest about where your time and energy creates the most value and then protecting those areas fiercely. And then here we are, reason 5. And honestly, this might be the one that ties all of the others together. Most people use their to-do list as a place to put things so they don't forget them, a memory offload, which is understandable, especially for those of us who've noticed that our working memory has become slightly less reliable than it used to. And I'm very much in that camp. Brain fog is real. So writing things down is genuinely useful, as I've mentioned, but Here's where it goes wrong. A memory system and a strategy tool are fundamentally different things. A memory system says, I need to remember this. But a strategy tool says, I'm going to do this in this order, in this time, for this reason. So when your to-do list is just a memory system, an ever-expanding collection of things that you don't want to forget, it has no hierarchy or sequence. There's no connection to your actual business goals. It's just a pile. And piles are overwhelming by definition. They don't have a top and a bottom. They're just a mass. So when I redesigned how I run my business, one of the shifts that made the biggest practical difference was separating my someday list from my this week list. And they live in completely different places. The someday list is where ideas go to wait patiently, and it can be as long as it likes because I'm never expected to action it immediately. But the this week list is deliberately short. It contains only the things that I have actively decided to do this week in light of my quarterly priorities. And here's the crucial bit. The this week list is built on the Wednesday or Thursday, the end of my week. So it's not reactive to anything I come into the next week. It's based on the decisions that I've made that I know where I want my focus to be next week. And that change is what finally stopped my list from just growing indefinitely because I stopped letting it grow passively. I became the one deciding what was on it. And I want to say this for anyone who's in perimenopause and finding the list more and more overwhelming than it used to be, because the hormonal changes that affect your working memory are real. They're not in your head. And the list feels more crushing because your brain is genuinely processing things differently than it was 5 years ago. That is not a reason to give up on structure. It's actually the most important reason to have better structure. When your internal filing system is under pressure, your external one needs to do more of the work. So not more tasks, but have more clarity, more intention. So a shorter, smarter list isn't a smaller ambition. It's just a more honest strategy. Okay, so let's bring all of this together. 5 reasons your to-do list isn't getting any shorter. And they are: 1, you are confusing activity with progress. 80% of what is on your list might not actually move anything in your business. Number 2, you have no filter for what is actually going on that list. Not everything that crosses your brain belongs on your to-do list. A quarterly strategy is the filter. 3, you're not protecting time to actually work through the list. You're just constantly reacting and you're filling your day before your priorities get done. 4, you're working to your weaknesses. That things that drain you will stay on the list forever unless you either outsource them or just let them go. And 5, you're using your to-do list as a memory tool, not a strategy tool. It needs to be intentional and short. So if I could give you one action to take away today, just one, it would be this. Open your to-do list right now and ask yourself, what are the 3 things on this list that if I did them this week would actually change something positively in my business? Then circle them, put them at the top and get them done. Those 3 things, that is your to-do list right now. If this episode has resonated with you, I would absolutely love for you to share it with another business owner who needs to hear it today, and to come and find me on Instagram and let me know what difference it has made to you and whether you've been able to find those 3 things and take action on them. I am at the Claire Bartlett on Instagram. You can send me a DM and I will always respond personally. It's only me. I don't have a chat bot. And there is a way to run your business that doesn't cost you everything. And I want to share it with you. In the meantime, good luck editing that to-do list. Have a great week. Take care of yourself, and I will see you soon.